Emily Carter drove along the winding stretch of Highway 285 just outside of Salida, Colorado, where the late afternoon sun painted the mountains in golden hues. The road was quiet, almost eerily so, with only the occasional truck rumbling past or a cyclist pedaling steadily along the shoulder. Emily had chosen this route for its tranquility, a chance to escape the constant buzz of Denver life for a few hours. She adjusted her sunglasses, glanced at the rearview mirror, and sipped from her thermos. Her thoughts drifted to the weekend ahead, a cabin tucked deep in the Rockies, a promise of silence, fresh air, and a chance to reset. Suddenly, a flash of red and blue appeared behind her. The unmistakable strobe of a police car's lights reflected off her rear windshield. Emily's first instinct was routine compliance. Probably just a tail light or speeding, she muttered under her breath. She slowed smoothly, activated her turn signal, and pulled over onto the shoulder of the highway, her hands steady on the wheel. The asphalt hummed beneath her tires, the mountains silent witnesses. Officer Paul Hendricks stepped out of his patrol car, a tall man with a stern expression softened slightly by years of experience on the road. He approached Emily's vehicle with measured caution, a notebook in hand. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Do you know why I pulled you over?" His voice was calm, professional, routine traffic stop tones. Emily smiled faintly. "I honestly don't, officer. I've been careful with my speed, I think." Her tone was polite, even deferential, but there was an undercurrent of calm that didn't go unnoticed. Hendricks glanced down at her registration, quickly running it through the system. As he did, he noticed her hands resting neatly in her lap, completely relaxed. There was nothing in her demeanor that suggested nervousness, yet something about her composure piqued his interest. He had stopped countless drivers over the years, and most had at least a flicker of anxiety in a situation like this. Emily's calmness was unusual. "Ma'am, do you mind if I ask where you're headed today?" he asked, glancing briefly at the empty highway around them. "Just out to the cabin," Emily replied smoothly. "A weekend getaway, nothing fancy." Her voice carried an ease that contrasted sharply with the tightening tension Hendricks felt creeping in his chest. He shrugged off the feeling. It was probably nothing. Yet the gut feeling refused to leave him. He finished his preliminary check on her license and registration and walked back to his patrol car. Typing in her details, he noticed a small alert pop up. Nothing serious, but enough to warrant a secondary look. His fingers hovered over the radio. "K9 unit, respond to a potential stop. Vehicle's behavior is suspicious," he muttered quietly to himself. Within minutes, the quiet hum of the highway was punctuated by the distant rumble of tires on asphalt. A K9 unit was approaching, a massive black and tan German shepherd named Rex, with his handler Officer Daniels in tow. Rex was one of the department's most experienced dogs, trained for detecting narcotics, explosives, and even tracking fugitives. The dog's reputation preceded him, calm, precise, and virtually unstoppable when on alert. Emily watched as the unit pulled up beside her car. Her posture remained calm, shoulders relaxed, fingers resting lightly on her lap. The sunlight caught the edges of her hair, and she exuded an almost serene confidence, the kind that unnerves even seasoned law enforcement officers. Daniels stepped forward, holding Rex firmly on a leather leash. "All right, ma'am," Hendricks said, turning to Emily. "This is Officer Daniels and Rex. We're going to have him take a look around your vehicle, okay?" Emily nodded, still composed. "Of course." The dog's handler gave Rex a quick command, and the massive animal immediately began a systematic sweep of the car's exterior. Its movements were smooth, purposeful, calculated. Emily followed every step with an almost imperceptible tilt of her head, eyes sharp, yet calm. Onlookers, drivers who had slowed to see what was happening, noticed her presence. She was alone, unassuming, yet her calm aura seemed to dominate the space around her. A few whispered under their breath, some pulled out phones, capturing the unusual scene. No one had expected this quiet highway to turn into a live demonstration of human versus law enforcement precision. As Rex approached the rear of the car, his nose twitched, sniffing at the bumper, at the tires, at the exhaust pipe. Emily remained seated, hands still in her lap. Hendricks watched closely, noting the dog's reactions. There was a tension in the air, a sort of anticipatory pause, as if everyone knew something extraordinary was about to happen. Then Emily leaned slightly forward. Her voice, calm and deliberate, broke the quiet. 2 words, crisp, concise, and precise, slipped from her lips. Rex froze, every muscle in the dog's body tensed. The ears perked sharply, eyes locking onto Emily as if he had just received an official command. He didn't sniff, didn't move, didn't bark. He simply obeyed. The dog's handler, Officer Daniels, blinked. Then he blinked again. Did she just? His voice trailed off, disbelief evident. Hendricks' jaw tightened. Impossible, he muttered, though the bodycam footage would later confirm exactly what had happened. Rex, trained to respond only to law enforcement commands, had stopped in absolute compliance to a civilian. Emily's hands remained in her lap, her gaze steady. Her calmness had not wavered, her posture not changed a fraction. Witnesses gasped. A few muttered to themselves, unsure whether to believe what they were seeing. How did she do that? One whispered. Phones came out, cameras pointed toward the scene, recording the moment that would soon circulate far beyond this quiet stretch of highway. Daniel stepped forward, attempting to regain control of Rex. The dog's focus was unwavering, locked entirely on Emily, responding to her 2-word command with perfect precision. The officer's voice, normally authoritative, came out strained as he tried to redirect the dog. Rex, come on, heel. The commands were ignored. Emily's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. The surreal calm of the scene was punctuated by the whispers and shocked expressions of those who had been watching. No one could explain how an ordinary woman, in a routine traffic stop, had gained complete control over one of the most highly trained police dogs in the state. Hendricks exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. The stop had started as a simple routine check, yet now the scenario was unfolding into something entirely unexpected. "Ma'am," he began cautiously, "we're going to need you to step out of the vehicle so we can." Emily nodded, almost imperceptibly. She stepped out, closing the door gently behind her. Her movements were measured, precise, like someone who had rehearsed this hundreds of times, yet it was clear she hadn't. Every action was instinctive, calm, and deliberate. The witness's eyes widened as she walked slowly toward the shoulder, unafraid of the massive dog that had moments ago frozen under her 2-word command. She met the gaze of the onlookers with a quiet, almost imperceptible acknowledgement. They felt compelled, hypnotized even, by the juxtaposition of her calmness and the officer's growing tension. Hendricks took a step forward, hand on his belt. "Ma'am, we need to ask you a few questions." His voice betrayed a mixture of caution and awe. Emily nodded, maintaining her composure. "Of course, officer." The 2 K-9 unit officers exchanged glances, recognizing the uniqueness of the situation. It wasn't just unusual, it was unprecedented in their experience. Their normally disciplined dog had obeyed a civilian without hesitation, a clear breach of standard procedure, and yet it was perfectly executed. As Emily followed Hendricks toward the patrol car, she cast a glance back at Rex. The dog remained frozen, eyes attentive, ears sharp, perfectly in sync with her presence. The quiet hum of the highway was punctuated only by distant engine sounds, whispers from bystanders, and the occasional click of a recording phone. This was no ordinary traffic stop. What had begun as a mundane roadside encounter had already begun to defy expectations, challenge assumptions, and leave every person present questioning the limits of control, instinct, and experience. Emily Carter, calm and composed, was the center of it all, and her 2 words had already set the stage for a story that would soon capture the attention of lawyers, witnesses, and the public alike. Emily followed Officer Hendricks toward the patrol car, her movements measured, calm, and deliberate. The distant murmurs of the onlookers faded slightly as the reality of the situation began to settle in. The two words she had spoken, so ordinary in tone yet extraordinary in effect, had frozen Rex, the department's top K-9 unit, in perfect obedience. Hendricks felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. He had been on the force for over 15 years, and while he'd witnessed countless unusual traffic stops, nothing in his experience had prepared him for this. From the roadside, a few curious drivers lingered in their vehicles, phones raised. The air was electric with anticipation. Everyone present instinctively recognized that something unprecedented was unfolding. Hendricks had called for a backup K-9 unit as a precaution, and now that backup was arriving. The deep rumble of the approaching SUV echoed off the surrounding cliffs, growing louder with every passing second. The backup vehicle rolled onto the shoulder, its lights flashing in coordination with the patrol car's strobe. Officer Daniels emerged with Rex in hand, a muscular German shepherd whose very presence commanded respect. Rex's coat glimmered in the late afternoon sun, each movement radiating power and precision. His handler, Daniels, was calm but visibly tense, acutely aware that this situation was anything but ordinary. As Daniels approached, Rex's leash taut in his handler's grip, the dog's posture remained rigid, alert. Every muscle was coiled, ready for command, but not Daniels. The K-9's attention was entirely on Emily. The officer's grip on the leash tightened instinctively, yet Rex ignored him completely. In his years of service, Daniels had trained dozens of dogs, and he had never encountered one that responded so perfectly to an untrained civilian. Emily remained seated inside her car, hands resting lightly in her lap. Her eyes tracked Rex's movements, calm but intensely focused. It was as though she could anticipate every step, every sniff, every twitch of the dog's ears. The tension in the air thickened. Witnesses could feel it, a quiet yet palpable anticipation. The ordinary highway, which moments ago had been tranquil, now felt like a stage set for an extraordinary confrontation between human will and trained instinct. "All right, Rex," Daniels said, attempting to maintain authority. His voice was steady, but there was a slight edge of uncertainty. Have a look at the vehicle." Rex responded with a slight tilt of his head, but instead of approaching the car, he froze, eyes fixed on Emily. His stance was tense, coiled, and unyielding. The dog's usual obedience to his handler's commands had vanished, replaced by an almost unnatural focus on Emily. Hendricks swallowed hard, realizing that they were facing an entirely new situation. The officers exchanged nervous glances. "This is unprecedented," Daniels murmured, kneeling slightly to adjust his hold on Rex's leash. "He's never done this before." Emily leaned forward slightly, tilting her head as she studied the dog. Then, in a voice both calm and precise, she spoke two words again. The words were crisp, authoritative, yet almost conversational. Immediately, Rex's entire body relaxed. He moved with precision, stepping forward only when Emily allowed, responding as though she were his designated handler. It was a flawless execution of a command that no civilian should have been able to deliver. Witnesses gasped. Phones clicked and whirred as onlookers recorded the event. Murmurs of disbelief spread through the small crowd. A few drivers slowed their vehicles, craning their necks to see more clearly. The scene had shifted from a simple traffic stop to something almost cinematic, a quiet battle of control between an ordinary woman and a highly trained police dog. Hendricks took a deep breath. He had to remain composed, even as the surreal nature of the situation pressed down on him. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "we need to ask you a few more questions about your familiarity with Rex. Can you step out of the vehicle, please?" Emily nodded without hesitation. She opened the car door and stepped onto the asphalt, her movements graceful and deliberate. The late afternoon sun highlighted the calm determination in her expression. She was perfectly aware of the eyes watching her, yet it did not faze her. There was a quiet power in her composure, one that seemed to radiate outward and affect everyone present, even Rex. As she walked toward the shoulder, the dog mirrored her movements, maintaining a perfect distance and posture. Each step she took was measured, precise, as though she had rehearsed this countless times. The scene unfolded slowly, almost theatrically. Witnesses leaned closer, captivated by what they were seeing. Children in passing vehicles pressed their faces against windows, parents whispered in astonishment, and even seasoned officers were momentarily speechless. Daniel stepped forward, attempting to regain control of Rex. "Heel, Rex," he commanded, his voice firm. But the dog remained focused on Emily, ignoring the familiar words entirely. His behavior was flawless but entirely outside the normal scope of police training. Hendricks' heart pounded. He had encountered many high-stress situations, but none that left him feeling so completely unprepared. Emily stopped a few feet from the vehicle, turning her head slightly toward the onlookers. "Everything's fine," she said softly, her voice carrying a quiet authority. "There's no need to worry." Her words had a calming effect, not only on Rex but also on the crowd. The tension in the air, though still palpable, softened slightly. Witnesses whispered among themselves, some recording the scene, others simply staring in awe. A few drivers who had been skeptical moments earlier now nodded in silent acknowledgement. Emily's presence was commanding, her composure magnetic. Hendricks gestured for Emily to stand by the patrol car. "We're going to need to ask you a few questions inside, ma'am," he said, his voice now tinged with curiosity. "Can you come with me?" She nodded again, stepping lightly onto the shoulder and followed Hendricks toward the patrol vehicle. Each step was purposeful. She remained calm and composed, her posture impeccable. Rex followed her movements closely, responsive only to her, completely ignoring the commands from his own handler. The crowd of witnesses began murmuring more loudly, realizing that this was no ordinary stop. "Did she just control the dog?" one driver whispered to his companion. "How is that possible?" Phones were raised, capturing every moment. Bystanders who had initially slowed for curiosity now recognized that they were witnessing something extraordinary, something that would likely be recounted for years. Even the seasoned officers felt the weight of the moment pressing down on them. The K-9's responsiveness to Emily's commands defied everything they had been taught about control, training, and protocol. Inside the patrol vehicle, Emily seated herself with calm efficiency. Hendricks and Daniels exchanged glances. "We're going to need to take this seriously," Daniels muttered under his breath. "Something about her, it's not normal." Emily's calm presence seemed almost supernatural, yet there was nothing theatrical about her. It was instinct, experience, and an uncanny understanding of Rex's behavior. Hendricks realized that the two words she had spoken were not just words. They were commands that resonated with the dog's training, delivered with a precision that only someone with experience could manage. The officers conferred quietly, debating how to proceed. The K-9 unit protocol was clear. Any civilian interfering with a trained dog's work could compromise an investigation, but this was no ordinary interference. Rex had not reacted aggressively or disruptively. He had obeyed, perfectly, and only Emily. The implications were immediate and profound. The scene on the highway remained tense, with bystanders now whispering about the woman who had seemingly tamed a police dog with two words. The quiet hum of passing vehicles, the rustle of the wind through nearby trees, and the distant calls of birds were all overshadowed by the surreal nature of the encounter. This was a stop that would not be forgotten, not only for the officers involved but for every witness present. Emily's calm demeanor never wavered. She answered Hendricks' questions politely, providing her identification and explaining her travels with quiet precision. Her words were measured, almost soothing, a stark contrast to the tension around her. Each movement, each glance, each breath seemed deliberate, yet effortless. As the sun began its descent behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the reality of the moment settled in. What had started as a routine traffic stop had escalated into an extraordinary demonstration of instinct, experience, and calm authority. Emily Carter had transformed an ordinary highway into a stage for an event that would be recounted, analyzed, and discussed far beyond the limits of that small Colorado road. Rex remained at Emily's side, obedient to her, ignoring the commands of his own handler. The officers, both Hendricks and Daniels, understood that this was an event they would never forget. Witnesses whispered, cameras continued to roll, and Emily's calm, unshakable presence dominated the scene entirely. This was more than a traffic stop. This was the moment when two words had redefined the boundaries of control, when calm authority met trained instinct, and when an ordinary day had become the beginning of a story that would capture the attention of lawyers, law enforcement, and the public alike. And in that quiet stretch of highway, with the sun dipping behind the peaks, Emily Carter simply stood, hands folded lightly in front of her, exuding a quiet power that left everyone, human and canine alike, speechless. The roadside air remained thick with tension as Emily Carter remained standing beside her vehicle, her posture calm and unwavering. The onlookers had begun to whisper among themselves, some craning their necks from their cars, others stepping cautiously closer to see the unfolding scene. In their eyes, she was no ordinary woman. She had just done the impossible, controlled Rex, one of the department's most highly trained K-9 units, with nothing more than 2 words. And she had done it effortlessly. Officer Hendricks, though seasoned, found himself frozen momentarily. He had stopped hundreds of drivers over his career, but nothing prepared him for the disbelief creeping up his spine. The dog's reaction was flawless. Rex, the German shepherd who responded to commands with the precision of a soldier, was entirely focused on Emily. His massive frame, which radiated authority and control, was now under hers completely. Hendricks' hand hovered near his belt, a reflexive gesture, but there was no need for authority here. The power balance had shifted. "Ma'am," Hendricks began cautiously, his voice calm yet threaded with incredulity. "What you just did, those 2 words, how did you?" He paused, realizing that even phrasing the question felt inadequate. No standard explanation existed. No protocol covered a civilian issuing a command so precise that a trained police dog obeyed without hesitation. Emily's eyes met his, calm and clear, with a faint hint of a knowing smile. "They're just words," she said softly, her voice carrying a quiet authority that seemed to echo in the still afternoon air. "Words that he understands." Daniels, Rex's handler, stepped forward, his grip tightening slightly on the leash. He was a man of experience, trained to handle the unpredictable, but this was unlike anything he had encountered. He had spent years teaching Rex commands, pairing gestures with verbal cues, instilling obedience that was near absolute. Yet here a stranger, someone with no apparent connection to law enforcement, had bypassed every safeguard. This doesn't make sense," he muttered under his breath. Rex, obedient only to Emily, remained perfectly still, ears perked, eyes locked on her every move. The dog's usual twitchiness when off-leash, its tendency to react to surrounding stimuli, was absent. He was completely attuned to Emily, responding to commands that no one else could issue. Witnesses gasped audibly, some reaching for their phones to capture the moment. The quiet highway had transformed into a stage for a spectacle no one present would soon forget. Emily leaned slightly forward, her hands resting lightly in front of her. Then, again, she spoke 2 words, simple yet precise, spoken with perfect timing. Rex obeyed instantly, executing a movement that mirrored the kind of command given by his official handler. The crowd's murmurs swelled into audible gasps. Some whispered, some shook their heads, some laughed nervously, unsure if what they were witnessing was real or an illusion. Hendricks took a step closer, his professional instincts urging him to regain control, but a part of him hesitated. He knew that any sudden move could unsettle the dog or provoke an unpredictable reaction. Instead, he watched, mesmerized. "Rex, heel," he called, the tone of his voice firm. Rex ignored him entirely, moving instead at Emily's direction. It was a silent yet unmistakable declaration. Emily, not the handler, was now in command. One of the witnesses, a middle-aged man named Paul Jenkins, muttered incredulously to his wife. Did she just control that dog with her words? His wife shook her head, equally stunned. I don't know, I've never seen anything like it. That's impossible. Even Hendricks found himself doubting the limits of what he knew. Police training had always emphasized that K-9 units should not, under any circumstances, be influenced by civilians. Yet here was proof to the contrary. Emily's 2 words had achieved exactly what no law enforcement officer could have predicted: total control of a trained, disciplined K-9. Daniels tried once more, his voice firmer this time. "Rex, sit." The dog paused for a fraction of a second, then, as if considering the request, turned his focus back to Emily. The handler's face tightened. Every officer present knew that this was not simply obedience. It was a display of instinct and understanding far beyond the ordinary. Emily's voice remained calm, measured, and unshakable. The 2 words she spoke again carried authority, rhythm, and timing. Rex responded immediately, performing movements that were fluid, precise, and unmistakable in their intent. It was as if the dog recognized a hierarchy in which Emily, though a civilian, was the ultimate authority at that moment. Hendricks' mind raced. Legally, procedurally, and professionally, nothing about this was covered by protocol. Could this affect a search? Could it affect evidence? Could it affect the legitimacy of the stop? Every scenario he considered seemed both unlikely and impossible. Yet the evidence was before him. The dog had obeyed a civilian, and that civilian was Emily Carter. Witnesses, previously tense and quiet, now began to murmur excitedly. Some speculated that she must be a professional dog trainer. Others suggested military experience. But all were uncertain, all were captivated. The stillness of the highway had vanished, replaced by a buzzing energy of awe and confusion. Emily's calm presence seemed to amplify the surreal nature of the moment. She wasn't acting for attention, nor was she demonstrating any form of arrogance. Her movements, her expressions, her voice, all were perfectly balanced between poise and authority. There was a natural rhythm in her actions, as if she had done this countless times, though nothing in her demeanor suggested rehearsal. Hendricks gestured to Emily gently. "Ma'am, we're going to need to ask you to step out of the car, okay? Just to answer a few questions about your familiarity with Rex." Emily nodded, as if acknowledging the inevitability of his request. She opened the door, stepping onto the asphalt with measured grace. The sun had dipped slightly lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the highway. Each step she took was deliberate, precise, commanding attention without effort. Rex mirrored her movements perfectly, walking slightly ahead of her but maintaining exact spacing. Every observer felt the tension in the air shift. This was no longer a traffic stop. It had become a demonstration of skill, instinct, and authority. The dog's focus on Emily was absolute. The handler's attempts to intervene were futile. Witnesses whispered among themselves, captivated by the scene. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hendricks said carefully, raising a hand slightly, "please remain calm. Everything is under control. We just need to assess the situation." His words, though reassuring in intention, did little to mitigate the awestruck silence of the crowd. Emily stopped a few feet from the patrol car. She glanced at the gathered witnesses with a faint, composed smile. "Everything's fine," she said softly. "No one needs to be alarmed." Her voice carried clarity and calm authority, reinforcing the surreal control she already exercised over Rex. Daniels exhaled sharply. "I've trained this dog for years," he muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. "And never like this. Never to respond to someone else's words with such precision." Hendricks nodded, though he remained focused on Emily. His mind raced with questions. Who was she? How did she know exactly what to say? Could this knowledge have been gained by training, military experience, or something else entirely? Each possibility seemed more extraordinary than the last. The observers continued to murmur, some taking cautious steps closer to capture the unfolding event. Cameras clicked, Phones, word, and whispers filled the space with speculation and astonishment. Children in passing vehicles pressed against windows, captivated. Even the drivers who had initially paused out of curiosity now realized they were witnessing something truly extraordinary. Emily remained seated in her calm, commanding aura, allowing the officers and the dog to maintain focus on her. Her 2 words, spoken not as a challenge but as instinctive commands, had already shifted the balance of the situation. For the first time in his career, Hendricks felt entirely unprepared for what was happening before him. "Ma'am," Hendricks said cautiously, stepping closer to Emily, "we're going to have to bring you in for further questioning. We need to understand exactly how you achieved this with Rex." Emily nodded, as though she had anticipated this outcome all along. "Of course, officer," she replied, her voice calm and measured, carrying no hint of fear or defensiveness. She opened the car door fully, stepping out with poise. Rex remained beside her, obedient, attentive, and entirely under her influence. Daniels and Hendricks exchanged uneasy glances, aware that the situation had moved beyond routine procedures. This was a moment that defied explanation, challenged training, and forced every observer, officer and civilian alike, to confront the boundaries of control, authority, and instinct. As Emily followed Hendricks toward the patrol vehicle, the sun continued to dip behind the mountains, casting long shadows that stretched across the quiet highway. The once tranquil setting now felt charged with anticipation, suspense, and the weight of something extraordinary. What had begun as a routine traffic stop was evolving into a story that would ripple far beyond the confines of this rural Colorado road. Emily Carter's calm, unwavering demeanor, paired with her inexplicable command over Rex, had captivated everyone present. Witnesses whispered about the woman who tamed a police dog with 2 words, and their whispers spread like wildfire. The story, they knew instinctively, would not end here. And in that quiet moment, with Rex obedient by her side and officers struggling to comprehend the reality before them, Emily Carter stood at the center of an event that would soon leave lawyers scrambling, witnesses speechless, and the public fascinated by the mystery and power of 2 simple words. The small crowd of onlookers continued to buzz with whispers as Emily Carter stepped lightly onto the asphalt beside her car. The sun was dipping lower behind the jagged peaks, casting the highway in a warm, golden glow that belied the tension in the air. Witnesses strained their necks to catch every detail, their curiosity mingled with disbelief. What they had just seen, Rex, the German shepherd, obeying a civilian's 2-word command, was so far beyond anything ordinary that their brains struggled to process it. Officer Hendricks cleared his throat, trying to regain a sense of authority over the surreal scene. "Ma'am, please follow me. We need to continue this at the station." His words were professional, but his voice carried an uncharacteristic tremor. Even he knew that what was unfolding went beyond a routine traffic stop. Emily nodded without hesitation. Her movements were deliberate, measured, calm. There was not a trace of fear or hesitation in her posture. Her hands rested lightly in front of her, fingers interlaced, and yet every subtle gesture radiated confidence. As she walked toward the patrol vehicle, Rex moved seamlessly at her side, perfectly obedient, attuned to her rhythm. The dog ignored every command from his handler, Daniels, who stood frozen, jaw tight, eyes wide with disbelief. Witnesses whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads, others raising phones to record the scene. One young woman muttered to her companion, "Did you see that? That dog obeyed her and not the officer. How is that possible?" The murmurs spread quickly, creating a low hum of astonishment along the quiet highway. Drivers who had initially slowed out of curiosity now understood that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Emily, with her calm demeanor and quiet authority, had taken control of a situation that had previously seemed routine, and the ramifications of her actions were beginning to sink in for everyone present. Hendricks led Emily to the patrol vehicle, stepping carefully as he glanced back at the crowd. He could feel the weight of every witness's gaze. Every passerby, every driver, every pedestrian in sight seemed captivated, caught in the strange and almost cinematic moment that had emerged on this quiet stretch of road. Daniel, still holding Rex's leash, knelt slightly to try and regain some measure of control. "Rex, heel," he commanded once again. But the dog remained entirely focused on Emily, as if her presence alone held authority. Daniel's face tightened, and he muttered under his breath, frustrated and baffled. Years of training, thousands of commands, countless hours of bonding, all rendered irrelevant in that moment by Emily Carter's two simple words. Hendricks glanced at the dog and then back at Emily, his mind racing with questions. How did she know the precise commands that would resonate with Rex? How had she trained him without ever meeting him before? Was this some kind of advanced military or law enforcement technique, or something else entirely? Each scenario seemed more extraordinary than the last. Emily's calm composure only intensified the confusion. She walked steadily toward the patrol car, eyes forward, occasionally glancing at the officers as if assessing the situation with an expert's precision. She exuded authority not through force, but through presence. Every movement was intentional, every glance measured. It was a subtle power that compelled attention and respect from both humans and animals alike. As Hendricks gestured for her to sit in the patrol vehicle, she complied smoothly, sliding into the passenger seat with ease. Rex remained obediently at her side, his massive head tilted slightly in her direction. The dog's entire posture radiated attentiveness, alertness, and loyalty, but entirely to Emily, not his handler. Witnesses gasped at the surreal sight, their whispers growing louder, tinged with awe and disbelief. The officers conferred quietly, stepping away from the patrol vehicle to discuss the next steps. Hendricks' mind was spinning. This was no longer a simple traffic stop. It had become an anomaly that defied everything he knew about protocol, training, and control. He had encountered unusual situations before, but none that left him genuinely questioning his assumptions. Daniel, still holding the leash loosely, muttered to Hendricks, "We're going to need to document this. Every movement, every reaction, it's unprecedented. That dog obeyed her completely, without hesitation. Nothing in the manual prepares you for this." Hendricks nodded, feeling a mix of professional duty and personal astonishment. "We'll have to bring her in for questioning, and I think we'll need to involve supervisors. This could have legal implications." Emily, overhearing the conversation, remained perfectly still, her expression unreadable but composed. She spoke softly, her voice calm but firm. "I will answer your questions, officer. Everything I do is to cooperate, not to complicate matters." Her words carried a sense of assurance that only intensified the surreal nature of the moment. Witnesses craned their necks, some leaning against their vehicles, others stepping closer to see. Everyone was acutely aware that what they had just witnessed, 2 words, a trained police dog, perfect obedience, was a rare and extraordinary phenomenon. One of the nearby drivers, a man in his 40s named Henry, whispered to his wife, "I've seen police dogs in action, but never like this. That's unreal." She just commanded him. His wife nodded, eyes wide. "I don't know if it's training or some kind of instinct, but it's incredible." Meanwhile, Hendricks radioed for additional units to secure the scene and begin documentation. The quiet highway was quickly transforming into an impromptu investigative area. Officers arrived to take statements from witnesses, while others set up cameras to capture every detail of the unusual event. Emily remained seated calmly in the patrol vehicle, her hands folded in her lap. Rex lay obediently beside her, eyes fixed on her with unwavering focus. Every observer was struck by the odd harmony between the woman and the dog, an unspoken connection that left even the most experienced officers speechless. Daniels approached cautiously, kneeling beside the dog. "Rex, heel," he commanded one more time. Rex paused, lifting his head briefly, then immediately returned to Emily's side, following the rhythm of her subtle gestures. Daniel's jaw tightened. This was no longer training, it was something else entirely, something instinctive and precise. Hendricks turned to Emily. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us for further questioning. We need to understand how you were able to achieve this with Rex. It could affect the legality of the stop and any subsequent investigations." Emily nodded calmly, as though she had anticipated this outcome all along. "Of course, officer. I will cooperate fully," she replied, her voice quiet, measured, and authoritative. She opened the car door and stepped out with grace, moving as if every action had been meticulously calculated. The crowd of witnesses watched, captivated. Some whispered, some recorded videos, and others simply stared in awe. The ordinary traffic stop had become a spectacle of control, instinct, and mystery. Emily's calm composure contrasted sharply with the officers' growing tension and the crowd's astonishment. Rex mirrored her movements perfectly, walking at a precise distance beside her. The dog's obedience was flawless, attentive, and unwavering. Observers could hardly believe their eyes. The massive German Shepherd, trained to respond exclusively to law enforcement commands, was now entirely under Emily's influence. Hendricks exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He knew that what had transpired could have far-reaching consequences. The procedural implications alone were staggering. The dog's responsiveness to a civilian, untrained and unconnected to law enforcement, could compromise investigations, evidence, and legal proceedings. Yet the event had already occurred, undeniable and recorded. Emily followed Hendricks toward the patrol vehicle once more, her calm presence radiating authority. Witnesses continued to murmur, some shaking their heads, others pointing to their phones to capture every detail. Children leaned forward in passing cars, wide-eyed, sensing the extraordinary nature of what they were witnessing. Daniel stood slightly apart, still holding the leash loosely, his expression a mixture of disbelief and professional concern. "I've never seen anything like this," he muttered. "Never." Emily turned her head slightly, acknowledging the murmurs without altering her calm composure. Her two words had not only commanded Rex, but had also captured the attention of everyone present. The tension in the air was now palpable, a mix of awe, curiosity, and disbelief. Hendricks gestured for Emily to sit in the patrol vehicle. She complied, sliding into the seat with ease. Rex remained obediently at her side, alert but calm, eyes never leaving her. The dog's loyalty and focus were undeniable, a testament to her precise control. As the sun continued to sink behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the highway, the reality of the situation began to settle in. What had started as a routine traffic stop had become an extraordinary demonstration of instinct, skill, and calm authority. Emily Carter had captivated every witness, defied professional norms, and left even experienced officers questioning their understanding of control and obedience. The officers knew that the incident was far from over. They would need to investigate, document, and analyze every aspect of Emily's interaction with Rex. The legal implications alone were staggering. Yet even in the midst of procedural concerns, it was impossible to ignore the sheer spectacle of what had just occurred. Emily remained composed, her calm authority unshaken. Rex lay obediently at her side, a perfect demonstration of her influence. Witnesses continued to whisper, some recording the event, others simply observing in stunned silence. The quiet highway had become the stage for a moment that would soon ripple far beyond the confines of this remote Colorado road. And as Emily Carter remained calm and composed, the crowd, the officers, and even Rex seemed to acknowledge a truth that words alone could not capture. She had done something extraordinary, something that would leave everyone who witnessed it, lawyers, officers, and bystanders alike, shocked and questioning everything they thought they knew. Emily Carter sat quietly in the passenger seat of the patrol vehicle, her hands resting lightly on her lap, eyes calm but alert. Outside, the sun was dipping behind the mountains, casting long, golden shadows across the asphalt. The highway had transformed from a mundane route into a theater of curiosity and disbelief. Witnesses still lingered on the roadside, whispering and recording videos, replaying the unbelievable moments when Rex, the highly trained police dog, had obeyed Emily's two simple words with flawless precision. Officer Hendricks tried to focus on procedure, but the surreal events weighed heavily on his mind. He knew he had to maintain professionalism, but his internal questions churned relentlessly. How had a civilian, completely unconnected to the department, managed to command a police dog trained for years? What authority, skill, or knowledge had Emily possessed that made Rex obey so instinctively? Daniel, still visibly shaken, stood just outside the vehicle. He held Rex's leash loosely, but his expression revealed a mixture of disbelief, confusion, and unease. "I've been with this dog for over 7 years," he said under his breath, speaking to Hendricks. "I've trained him through every imaginable scenario, every type of command, every emergency situation, and he's never responded to anyone like that before. Not even me sometimes." Hendricks nodded gravely, rubbing his temple. "This could have legal implications," he said softly. "Rex obeying her could affect evidence, investigations, and everything. But at the same time, this is unlike anything I've ever seen. We need to understand her." Emily's gaze remained serene, though she was acutely aware of the tension surrounding her. She knew the officers were analyzing her every move, speculating about her identity, background, and potential motives. Yet she remained composed, answering every procedural request with calm precision. "Ma'am," Hendricks began, his voice professional yet cautious, "we're going to need to bring you to the station for further questioning. This situation is unprecedented, and we need to understand exactly how you were able to achieve this with Rex." Emily nodded slowly, her expression neutral. "I understand, officer. I will cooperate fully. There is nothing to hide." The officers prepared the vehicle for transport, Rex obediently walking alongside Emily as if he had always belonged by her side. Witnesses continued to murmur, recording the scene on their phones. The quiet highway, once ordinary and uneventful, had become the stage for a story that would capture national attention once details emerged. As the patrol vehicle began its slow journey toward the station, Hendricks radioed ahead to inform the precinct of the unusual situation. The dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio. "Copy that, Officer Hendricks. You're bringing in Emily Carter, correct? And Rex is involved." "Yes," Hendricks replied. "Prepare for a detailed report. This is unique. We need supervisors and legal representatives notified immediately." Daniels walked beside the vehicle for a moment, glancing down at Rex. "I still can't believe it," he said quietly. "Every instinct in my body tells me this shouldn't be possible, and yet it happened, every single time." Emily's calm voice broke the silence inside the vehicle. "Rex is a remarkable dog. He responds to cues that resonate with him. That's all there is to it." Her words were simple, but they carried weight and authority that silenced further speculation, at least momentarily. The drive to the station was tense but quiet. Hendricks' mind raced with questions. Should they conduct background checks immediately? Were there records of Emily Carter's training or experiences that could explain this extraordinary interaction? Could she have worked with K-9 units, or perhaps in military service? Each thought seemed plausible, yet none fit the mystery perfectly. By the time they arrived at the precinct, the news of Emily's interaction with Rex had already begun to spread. Officers and staff lined the hallway, whispering in disbelief as they caught glimpses of the calm woman and the obedient German shepherd at her side. The station had never experienced anything like this. The combination of a civilian's control over a K-9 unit and the extraordinary public reaction created an atmosphere of tension and curiosity. Hendricks led Emily to an interview room, motions subtle but precise, as Rex remained perfectly at her side, calm and obedient. Witnesses and officers outside craned their necks, trying to catch a glimpse, murmuring among themselves about the woman who had seemingly mastered a police dog with 2 simple words. Inside the interview room, Emily settled into a chair, her demeanor unshakable. Hendricks took a seat across from her, glancing down at his notes. "Ms. Carter, we need to document everything from the beginning," he said. "The interaction with Rex, the commands you used, and how you came to have this understanding. It's vital for protocol, legality, and public safety." Emily nodded, her calm voice steady. "Of course, officer, I will explain everything I can, but I will be honest. My method is instinctual. It's not something I learned from formal training. It comes from experience, observation, and understanding the dog's behavior." Hendricks raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Experience, can you elaborate?" Emily paused, choosing her words carefully. "I've worked with animals my entire life, dogs in particular. I've studied their behavior, body language, and responses to human cues. Over time, I developed an understanding that allows me to communicate with them in ways that resonate instinctively." Daniel, still uneasy, glanced at Hendricks. "But Rex is trained for law enforcement, not for civilian handlers. That's why this is unprecedented." Emily met his gaze evenly. "I understand that, and I respect the training Rex has undergone. My words don't override training, they align with it. That's why he responded. It wasn't control for the sake of control. It was alignment." Hendricks leaned back slightly, taking a deep breath. The explanation was logical on one level but extraordinary on another. He scribbled notes quickly, documenting her statements. He had to maintain professionalism, yet he could not ignore the impact of her explanation. This woman's 2 words had defied expectations, altered the behavior of a trained K-9 unit, and captivated witnesses in a way that would ripple far beyond the precinct. The questioning continued for over an hour, with Emily answering calmly, never flustered. She explained her background with animals, her methods of observation, and the subtle cues she noticed in dogs' body language. Every answer was precise, careful, and coherent, reinforcing the credibility of her extraordinary interaction with Rex. Meanwhile, back at the highway, news crews had arrived, alerted by witnesses and passing drivers. The story of the woman who had commanded a police dog with 2 words was spreading rapidly. Live broadcasts showed clips of Rex obeying Emily, while reporters speculated on her background, training, and possible motives. The public fascination was immediate, intense, and insatiable. In the interview room, Hendricks and Daniels continued to document every detail. "We need to verify her claims," Hendricks said. "Background checks, references, training history, everything. But even with that, this is going to be hard to explain to anyone who wasn't here." Emily nodded. "I understand. I am willing to cooperate fully. But I must also emphasize that Rex's response was instinctual. It was a mutual recognition, not obedience for the sake of obedience." Daniel, still holding the leash outside the interview room, whispered under his breath, "I've never seen a dog respond like that. Ever. It's unreal." Hendricks made a mental note to escalate the situation to the department's supervisors. This event could not remain confined to a single report. It would require review at every level, from training officers to legal counsel, potentially even public relations. The implications were vast. Emily remained calm, composed, and focused, as if aware of the growing intrigue surrounding her presence. She did not seem intimidated by the authority of law enforcement or by the public attention already forming outside the station. Her calm demeanor was magnetic, commanding respect and attention without any overt assertion of power. As the questioning continued, it became clear that Emily Carter's interaction with Rex was not merely a matter of luck or coincidence. Her 2 words had aligned perfectly with the dog's training and instincts, producing a result that no officer or witness could have predicted. It was a rare convergence of knowledge, observation, and instinct that left everyone involved both awed and unsettled. By the time the interview concluded, Hendricks and Daniels had recorded every detail meticulously. Witnesses outside had begun to gather in small groups, speculating about Emily Carter and her extraordinary ability to control Rex. The story was already taking on a life of its own, spreading from witness to witness, driver to driver, and eventually beyond the highway to social media and local news outlets. Emily remained seated serene, as the officers prepared to continue procedural steps, including background verification and additional statements from the witnesses. Her calm presence contrasted sharply with the whirlwind of speculation, curiosity, and astonishment that had grown outside. It was clear that she had altered the course of events in ways that would continue to unfold for days, if not weeks. And as Hendricks stepped out to manage the growing crowd and the flurry of attention, he realized one undeniable truth. Emily Carter's 2 words had done more than command a dog. They had sparked a series of events that would challenge assumptions, defy expectations, and leave witnesses, officers, and eventually the public questioning the boundaries of skill, instinct, and authority. In that moment, the precinct seemed charged with anticipation. Every officer, every witness, and every observer aware that the story unfolding before them was extraordinary. Emily Carter had demonstrated a rare talent, a combination of understanding, timing, and instinct that few could hope to replicate. And in the quiet hum of the precinct, with Rex calm and obedient at her side, Emily Carter waited patiently, fully aware of the attention, the scrutiny, and the questions that would inevitably follow, and prepared to meet them with the same calm authority that had commanded a police dog and left a small highway in Colorado utterly captivated. By the following morning, news of Emily Carter's extraordinary interaction with Rex had exploded across the state. Local stations ran continuous coverage, looping footage of the German Shepherd responding flawlessly to Emily's 2 words. Social media amplified every clip, accompanied by hashtags like 2 words 2 commands and Emily Carter mystery. News anchors speculated endlessly. Was she a former military K-9 trainer, a hidden genius in animal behavior, or something altogether stranger? The public was captivated, and the police department suddenly found itself in uncharted territory. Inside the precinct, the atmosphere was tense and urgent. Officer Hendricks and Daniels were under pressure from their superiors to fully document the incident and prepare a comprehensive report for legal review. The department's internal affairs and the city's legal team were summoned immediately, intent on understanding the implications of what had transpired. Questions loomed. Did Emily's commands compromise Rex's legal use as a K-9 unit? Could evidence collected during her interaction be challenged in court? And above all, who exactly was Emily Carter, and what did she know about police procedure? Emily, meanwhile, remained calm in the interview room. Her composure was almost unnerving to the officers, who had been scrambling to manage the legal and procedural implications of her actions. Even as lawyers and supervisors filed into the precinct, each bearing folders and legal pads, she sat with her hands folded neatly on her lap, Rex obediently at her side. His alert posture mirrored hers, an extension of her calm authority. A city attorney named Margaret Lawson stepped forward, a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and an equally sharp mind. "Ms. Carter," she began, voice firm but polite, "we need to understand the full scope of your actions. Your interaction with Rex, while remarkable, raises significant legal questions. How did you know the exact commands that would produce this result?" Emily's expression remained neutral, her tone even. "It was not about knowing commands in the traditional sense," she explained. "It was about understanding behavior, observation, and alignment. Rex responded instinctively to cues that matched his training and temperament. That's why he obeyed." Lawson raised an eyebrow, skeptical but intrigued. "You claim instinctive alignment. Are you suggesting that your understanding of this dog somehow bypassed official training?" Emily nodded gently. "Not bypassed, enhanced. The dog's training is already thorough. I simply communicated in a manner that resonated naturally with him. It was a recognition, not a manipulation. Daniel, standing beside Rex, could not hide his astonishment. "I've trained this dog for over 7 years," he muttered under his breath, "and he has never responded like that to anyone else." Lawson made a note, frowning. "I see. We will need to document everything in detail. Witness statements, officer reports, video evidence, everything." She turned to Hendricks. "Have you compiled the preliminary report?" Hendricks nodded, though he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "Yes, ma'am. But I must note, this is unprecedented. We have no precedent for a civilian issuing commands to a trained K-9 unit with such precision and authority. We are prepared to document everything, but the implications are extraordinary." Emily remained quiet, letting the legal and procedural discussion unfold around her. Her calmness contrasted sharply with the intensity in the room, drawing the attention of everyone present. She did not feel threatened or anxious. She had anticipated scrutiny and was ready to meet it with poise. The legal team began a meticulous review. They replayed the video footage from multiple angles, analyzed witness statements, and scrutinized every detail of Emily's interaction with Rex. Lawyers debated the potential impact on evidence collection and K-9 protocol. Some argued that Emily's commands might compromise legal cases, while others marveled at the extraordinary precision and alignment she had demonstrated. A junior attorney, visibly flustered, asked, "If a civilian can issue commands like this, does that undermine all K-9 operations? Could a case be challenged based on the dog's obedience to someone outside the chain of command?" Margaret Lawson responded, carefully choosing her words. "Potentially, yes, but we must differentiate between instinctual alignment and deliberate interference. In this case, there is no evidence of manipulation or malice. The dog's obedience was a result of natural resonance, not coercion. Still, this raises questions that will require legal interpretation." Meanwhile, news crews outside the precinct were live streaming footage of Emily entering and exiting the building, Rex at her side. Viewers across the country were captivated. Comments flooded in. Some speculated she was a former K-9 officer. Others theorized she had military experience or advanced psychological training. Many were simply awed, repeating the story of 2 words and a dog that obeyed flawlessly. Inside the interview room, Emily answered every question with clarity and precision. Lawyers asked about her background with animals, her experiences with dogs, and her methods of communication. Each answer was careful, measured, and coherent. She emphasized observation, patience, and instinct, qualities she had cultivated over a lifetime of working with animals. Hendricks, listening closely, realized that Emily's explanations were both plausible and extraordinary. He had never encountered anyone who could so seamlessly align instinct, observation, and timing to achieve results that defied standard expectations. Rex's behavior, fully obedient and attuned to her cues, served as living proof of her claims. The legal team continued their discussion, raising procedural concerns. Could Emily's interaction affect ongoing investigations? Were there liabilities for the department? Could her methods be replicated safely or legally? Every question seemed to spiral into further complexity, highlighting the unprecedented nature of the event. Daniel, still visibly uneasy, whispered to Hendricks, "We need to verify her background. Military, training schools, psychological assessments, anything. This isn't normal. Rex doesn't just obey like that." Hendricks nodded. "Agreed. We'll run full checks. But even if she has formal training, this level of instinctual alignment is rare. I've never seen anything like it." As the morning stretched into afternoon, Emily remained calm, answering questions and clarifying her methods. Her composure and clarity began to earn the respect of even the most skeptical lawyers and officers. It was clear that her abilities were not fraudulent or deceptive. They were extraordinary, grounded in knowledge, observation, and instinct. Outside, reporters continued to capture the unfolding story. Social media speculation was rampant. News outlets debated the implications of a civilian commanding a police dog. Legal analysts pondered potential consequences, and the public was captivated by a woman whose 2 words had sparked a media firestorm. Lawson summarized the day's findings. "We must proceed carefully. Emily Carter's abilities are extraordinary, and while her actions appear harmless, the legal ramifications are complex. We will continue our investigation, verify her background, and consult with K9 experts to fully understand the scope of her influence on Rex." Emily nodded politely. "I understand. I will cooperate fully. My intention was never to challenge authority, interfere with protocol, or disrupt operations. I simply acted in a way that aligned with Rex's instincts and training." Hendricks glanced at Daniels, who exhaled sharply. The tension in the room remained high, but a subtle respect was beginning to emerge. Emily's calm authority and precise explanations were gradually diffusing the initial shock and skepticism. The day ended with preliminary reports filed, background checks initiated, and plans to interview additional witnesses who had observed the roadside encounter. Emily remained composed throughout, her serene presence a stark contrast to the flurry of activity around her. Rex, obedient and alert at her side, served as a living testament to the extraordinary events that had taken place. By evening, the precinct had settled into a cautious routine. Officers and lawyers discussed next steps, witnesses shared statements, and Emily continued to answer questions with unwavering calm. The story of 2 words and a police dog had already captured national attention, and the legal implications were only beginning to unfold. Hendricks reflected privately on the day's events. Emily Carter had not only commanded Rex with extraordinary precision, but she had also captivated witnesses, unsettled officers, and left the legal team scrambling to interpret the ramifications. The incident had grown far beyond a simple traffic stop. It was now a legal, procedural, and media phenomenon that would reverberate across the state and beyond. And in the quiet of the interview room, with Rex at her side and lawyers preparing their reports, Emily Carter remained calm, composed, and entirely unflappable. A woman whose 2 words had sparked awe, confusion, and an extraordinary legal storm. The following morning, the precinct was already buzzing with a different kind of energy. The media had camped outside for hours, eager for any glimpse of Emily Carter and Rex. News helicopters hovered above, broadcasting live footage to millions of viewers who were captivated by the woman who had commanded a highly trained police dog with 2 simple words. Social media was ablaze with speculation, and hashtags like 2 words mystery, Emily Carter, and Rex responds were trending nationally. Inside the precinct, the atmosphere was charged with urgency. Officers, lawyers, and supervisors were moving through the hallways, all aware that the situation was no longer just a local anomaly. It was a story with national implications. Questions about procedure, legality, and the integrity of K9 operations had to be addressed immediately. But for Hendricks and Daniels, the focus had shifted to a more pressing question. Who was Emily Carter really? Emily remained seated calmly in the interview room, Rex lying obediently at her feet. Her serene demeanor contrasted sharply with the flurry of activity outside. Hendricks and Lawson had decided that before any further procedural steps could proceed, they needed to understand her background thoroughly. It was one thing for her to explain her interaction with Rex. It was another entirely to confirm that nothing in her past suggested misuse of her abilities. Margaret Lawson, the city attorney, entered the room, holding a folder thick with preliminary background checks and public records. "Ms. Carter," she began, her tone formal but not unkind, "we've conducted an initial review of public records and your history. While most of it appears ordinary, there are several areas we need clarification on." Emily nodded politely, her calm gaze steady. "I will answer any questions to the best of my ability," she replied, her voice quiet but firm. There is nothing in my past that should concern the department or the public. Lawson opened the folder, scanning the contents quickly before speaking. First, your educational background. You have degrees in psychology and animal behavior, correct? Yes, Emily replied. I studied human and animal psychology extensively. My understanding of behavior, both human and canine, comes from years of observation, research, and practical experience. Lawson nodded, flipping to another page. Next, your professional experience. We've found records of volunteer work with animal shelters, but also some classified consulting projects with private security firms, and a short-term role with a government research program involving behavioral analysis. Can you elaborate on those? Emily took a breath, her expression calm but thoughtful. The consulting work involved training and evaluating animals for specialized security tasks, mostly in controlled environments. The government program was focused on behavioral observation, studying responses and interactions between trained animals and humans. I was never in a law enforcement or military command role, but I gained experience in subtle communication and behavioral alignment. Hendricks leaned forward, intrigued. So, nothing in your past directly involved police K-9 units? Emily shook her head. No, but my experience with other highly trained animals gave me insights into reading signals, body language, and instinctual responses. Those insights allowed me to communicate in ways that resonated naturally with Rex, without overriding his training. Daniel, still holding Rex's leash outside the room, muttered under his breath, I've never seen anything like this. He's trained to respond to law enforcement cues only, and yet. Emily's calm voice interrupted his thought. Rex did not respond to law enforcement cues. He responded to alignment cues, subtle changes in posture, tone, and body language that matched his trained instincts. It was recognition, not authority. Lawson continued, carefully examining the records. We also found mention of your work with a private K-9 security team in several high-risk environments. Witnesses there report unusual rapport with multiple dogs, some trained for complex tactical operations. Can you explain? Emily nodded. Those experiences taught me to observe dogs intensely, how they respond under stress, how they interpret commands, how subtle signals can guide behavior. It was never about exerting control for the sake of control. It was always about mutual understanding. Hendricks felt a chill. The pieces were beginning to form a picture, one that explained how Emily could achieve something so extraordinary with Rex. Her background, though unconventional for law enforcement, revealed a lifetime of experience aligning with her extraordinary skill. Lawson leaned back, considering the implications. Ms. Carter, your skills are exceptional, but there are legal ramifications to consider. Rex is a certified K-9 unit. Evidence collected during incidents involving him must be unimpeachable. If you can issue commands that override standard protocol, even instinctually, that could complicate any ongoing or future investigations. Emily nodded. I understand, but I want to emphasize again, my intent was never to interfere with law enforcement operations. I responded to a situation that required calm, precise communication. Everything I did was in alignment with Rex's training, not in opposition to it. At that moment, a junior officer entered, holding a tablet with social media analytics. Ma'am, he said to Lawson, the story is going viral. Clips of Rex obeying Ms. Carter are trending nationally. Public reaction is intense. Some are calling it a miracle, others are demanding explanations. It's creating a firestorm. Lawson sighed. We expected media attention, but not on this scale. This will complicate everything: public perception, departmental reputation, and potential legal inquiries. We need to prepare for public statements. Hendricks watched Emily carefully. Despite the mounting attention, she remained unshaken, her calm aura intact. Even Rex, massive and imposing, mirrored her serenity, his focus unwavering. It was as if the world outside, the media, the law, the public, was secondary to the moment, and Emily was entirely in control of the situation. Lawson turned back to Emily. Given the public attention, we also need to understand if there is any risk of misinterpretation. Could someone claim that you intentionally manipulated Rex, or that you posed a threat to law enforcement operations? Emily's voice was steady and measured. No, I have no interest in misleading anyone or causing disruption. Everything I did was based on observation, alignment, and calm communication. My actions were defensive in nature, intended to prevent escalation, not to override authority. Daniels, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. I still can't wrap my head around it. Rex knows thousands of commands, responds to his handler's cues instinctively, and yet with her, it's like he recognizes her authority without question. It's unnerving. Emily nodded slowly. It's not authority in the conventional sense, it's recognition. He recognized alignment, not dominance. That's the key difference. The lawyers and officers exchanged glances. The explanation made sense theoretically, but witnessing it was something else entirely. The idea that a civilian could achieve this level of influence over a trained K-9 unit challenged assumptions and threatened to upend procedural norms. Meanwhile, outside, the media frenzy intensified. Helicopters circled the precinct, reporters interviewed witnesses, and social media users speculated endlessly. Every clip, every comment, every analysis fed a growing narrative. Emily Carter was extraordinary, her skills unparalleled, and Rex's obedience was nothing short of miraculous. Inside the precinct, Lawson summarized the situation. We need to prepare for public scrutiny, legal questions, and internal reviews. Ms. Carter, your cooperation has been exemplary, but we must also document your skills, your background, and your actions thoroughly. We are dealing with an unprecedented situation. Emily nodded, her calm gaze unwavering. I understand. I will cooperate fully. My goal is transparency and clarity. Hendricks reflected privately on the day's events. Emily Carter was unlike anyone he had ever encountered. Her 2 words had not only commanded Rex, but had also captivated the public, unsettled officers, and sparked an unprecedented legal and media storm. Her past, carefully documented, now revealed a pattern of experience and insight that explained her abilities without diminishing their extraordinary nature. And as the day drew to a close, with Rex lying obediently by her side and lawyers preparing reports for internal and public review, Emily Carter remained serene, fully aware of the attention, the scrutiny, and the questions that would inevitably follow. She had not only commanded a police dog with 2 words, but had also demonstrated an extraordinary combination of skill, intuition, and composure that would leave a lasting impact on everyone who witnessed it. Outside, the sun set over the city, casting long shadows across the precinct. Inside, the legal and procedural machinery continued its careful work, documenting, analyzing, and debating the implications of Emily's extraordinary abilities. And through it all, Emily Carter remained calm, focused, and entirely unflappable, a woman whose 2 words had ignited a storm of fascination, skepticism, and awe, and whose story was only beginning to unfold. The following day dawned with a mix of tension and anticipation. The precinct had transformed into a hive of activity, unlike anything it had ever seen. Media crews were stationed outside, officers moved with heightened urgency, and legal teams had convened to finalize the documentation of Emily Carter's extraordinary interaction with Rex. Yet inside the interview room, Emily remained composed, her calm demeanor a striking contrast to the flurry surrounding her. Rex sat at her side, ears perked, eyes alert, a living symbol of the storm that had erupted over 2 simple words. Hendricks watched her quietly, a mix of awe and professional curiosity in his expression. Ms. Carter, he began, today we finalize statements, ensure all legal documentation is complete, and prepare for potential public communication. But before we proceed, I need to ask something fundamental. What drove you to act the way you did with Rex in the first place?" Emily's eyes, steady and reflective, met his. "Officer Hendricks, it wasn't about proving anything or gaining attention. I saw a situation that could escalate, and I understood that Rex, like any trained K9, responds to clarity, calmness, and alignment. My goal was to prevent panic, to guide the situation safely, and to maintain control without coercion." Daniel, still visibly unsettled, muttered, "Safe. I've been in high-stress situations with Rex, but I've never seen him respond like that. Not to me, not in training, not in any scenario. And yet she had him in perfect alignment." Emily nodded. "It's not about dominance or authority. It's about recognition. Rex recognized alignment and mirrored it instinctively. That's why he obeyed without hesitation." Margaret Lawson, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. "Ms. Carter, the public has already formed opinions. Your actions are extraordinary, and while there are no indications of malicious intent, you've challenged established protocols. We must consider the implications carefully. Are you prepared for that scrutiny?" Emily's response was calm, unwavering. "Yes, I understand the scrutiny, and I am prepared to answer every question, cooperate fully, and ensure that everything is transparent. My intent has always been to act responsibly and safely." With that, the legal team began preparing public statements and coordinating with law enforcement agencies to ensure that Emily's extraordinary actions were documented accurately. Video footage of her interaction with Rex was reviewed multiple times, witness statements were collected and verified, and internal reports were meticulously drafted. Every detail mattered. Every nuance of the interaction had to be captured to prevent misinterpretation. Outside the precinct, the media frenzy continued. Helicopters circled overhead, capturing live footage of reporters interviewing witnesses and officers alike. News stations debated endlessly about the woman who had achieved what many considered impossible, commanding a fully trained police dog with 2 words. Social media exploded with speculation, admiration, and amazement. Emily Carter had become a figure of fascination overnight. Despite the chaos, Emily remained composed. She understood the power of perception, the weight of responsibility, and the importance of clarity. When approached for interviews, she spoke calmly, carefully, and with a quiet authority that captivated audiences. She did not seek fame, but she did not shy away from her responsibility to explain the situation accurately. In a live interview broadcast to millions, Emily was asked to demonstrate how she had interacted with Rex. The police dog, calm and obedient, stood beside her as cameras rolled. With 2 simple words, spoken clearly and softly, Rex responded instantly, performing a series of trained commands flawlessly. The live demonstration left viewers speechless, and the world began to grasp the extraordinary nature of what had transpired. Legal experts weighed in, discussing the implications for K9 protocols, public safety, and law enforcement procedures. Psychologists analyzed Emily's ability to understand and communicate with animals. Animal behaviorists marveled at her precise alignment with Rex's instincts. Across the country, viewers debated endlessly, fascinated by the mystery and skill she had displayed. Back at the precinct, Hendricks and Daniels watched the coverage with a mixture of pride and disbelief. "I've seen K9 training at every level," Hendricks said quietly, "but I've never seen anything like this. And to think, it all started with 2 words." Daniels shook his head, still processing the events. "She didn't just command Rex. She connected with him in a way that no one else could. No one trained, no one experienced, no one in law enforcement. It's unreal." Emily, sitting quietly in the corner, heard their conversation but did not respond. She knew the reality of the situation. It wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. It was understanding, observation, and alignment. 2 words were all it took because Rex recognized clarity and mirrored it instinctively. As the day progressed, the legal team finalized their reports. It was determined that Emily's actions had not compromised any law enforcement operations, and Rex's obedience had been a result of natural alignment rather than interference. The department issued a public statement acknowledging her extraordinary skill, while ensuring the public understood that she posed no threat to law enforcement procedures. Margaret Lawson addressed the media directly. Ms. Carter's actions were remarkable, unprecedented, and entirely in alignment with proper K-9 training. She did not manipulate or coerce. Instead, her interaction with Rex demonstrated a unique understanding of animal behavior, patience, and instinctual alignment. This serves as an example of extraordinary skill, not interference. Emily, standing beside Rex, nodded respectfully. She spoke softly to the assembled reporters. "My intent was to ensure safety and calm in a tense situation. I have great respect for law enforcement, for Rex, and for the protocols that keep communities safe. I hope this experience encourages people to look at animals' behavior and communication with patience and understanding." The public response was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Social media erupted with admiration. Viewers praised her calm authority, and experts analyzed the demonstration from every conceivable angle. For the first time, a civilian had demonstrated a level of skill and instinct with a police K-9 that left professionals and the public alike in awe. Hendricks, observing the media coverage, reflected on the entire ordeal. Emily Carter had not only diffused a tense situation, but had also captured the imagination of a nation. Her skill, patience, and calm demeanor had turned a single roadside encounter into a story that would be remembered for years. Daniels knelt beside Rex, scratching the dog behind the ears. "You're a remarkable dog," he whispered, "but I think we all learned something today about communication, patience, and trust, and she's extraordinary." Emily's gaze met theirs briefly, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them. She had acted not for recognition, not for fame, but because she understood the power of calm, clarity, and alignment. Her 2 words had done more than command a dog. They had demonstrated a rare harmony between instinct, training, and human insight. By the evening, the precinct had returned to a semblance of normalcy. Officers completed reports, legal documentation was finalized, and the media gradually shifted focus as Emily's story became part of the national conversation. But for those who had witnessed the extraordinary events firsthand, Hendricks, Daniels, and the team at the precinct, the memory would remain vivid. 2 words, spoken calmly, had transformed a routine interaction into a legend. Emily Carter left the precinct quietly, Rex obediently at her side. As she stepped into the fading sunlight, she reflected on the events of the past few days. The attention, the scrutiny, the fascination, it was all secondary to the core truth she had demonstrated: the power of observation, understanding, and alignment. And as the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the city, the story of Emily Carter and her 2 words would echo far beyond the precinct, inspiring awe, curiosity, and respect. Witnesses would recount it for years, law enforcement would study it, and the public would marvel at the calm authority of a woman who, with 2 simple words, had commanded a police dog, left lawyers scrambling, and made the world pause in astonishment. 2 words, 1 dog, an extraordinary connection that had changed perceptions, challenged assumptions, and captured the hearts and minds of everyone who witnessed it. And in that quiet moment, Emily Carter and Rex walked side by side, a living testament to the extraordinary power of understanding, patience, and instinct. For those who had watched, the lesson was clear. Sometimes it takes only 2 words and a deep understanding of what lies beneath to change everything.